on to the National League Championship Series after defeating the big bad Philadelphia Phillies in the National League Division Series 3-1. It is episode number 47 of the Queen's Connection, a production of Patton Sports Creative. I am your host, Andrew Patton, joined by the co-host, Corne Hogeveen. And Corne, we were talking a little bit before we started, and this is a conversation we've had in the past where, we were happy that the Mets made the playoffs just from where they were, taking all the way back to June 2nd. But now they've defeated the Brewers in the wild card round. They handled the Phillies very well in the divisional round. And now they're moving on to the National League Championship Series. And it's getting to a point where it's like, now I just want them to go win it all. Go win it all. But obviously that's a tall task. And for these guys, there's a lot of good teams left in the field, and their opponent is still to be determined for the National League Championship Series at the moment. But this ride the Mets are on, it's a runaway train at the moment, and hopefully for our sake, the train just keeps on plowing through whoever comes in their way.
Yeah, you're with the best four teams now. So if you look at statistics and also it's a 25% chance you win the World Series, Andrew. And I know you love that. You love win probability percentage. So I have to put it in there in this show. It's the most favorite stat for Andrew to watch during a game. But yes, you're now part of the four teams that can win it all. Still, I think I'm extremely proud of this team, but the closer you get, the more you say from, well, let's just do it now. It started as an in-between year. It eventually went a year where you could might get some nice prospects in return for trade pieces, and now you're part of the best four, and that's a complete change in how you look at this season. But more and more, the Mets get further and further. So now just let's do it. Let's get it.
Certainly, and obviously, as the Mets continue this run, the games get even more nerve-wracking for the fans. Particularly, we'll focus on me since I'm the host of the show, but I know you're a little bit more calm, cool, and collected compared to me at this juncture of the season. But really, for the most part in this Phillies series, there were some nervous moments, no doubt about that. But like I said off the top, really felt like the Mets were the more dominant team in this series, and obviously that shows with beating the Phillies in 4 games in the best of 5. Um, and you just think back to that series starting in Philadelphia on Saturday. They're going up against Zach Wheeler in Game 1, and the improbable return of Kodai Senga, who threw 2 innings. Obviously, the leadoff home run from Schwarber. Where we can talk about what we saw from Senga in this game as well. But no, the Mets. That game 1 kind of set the tone for the series, because the Mets are able to take their punches from Zach Wheeler, who threw 7 shutout innings. But the Mets pitching staff with Senga, Peterson, Reed Garrett, they held the Phillies to just that 1 run, which was, like I said, the leadoff home run by Kyle Schwarber. And the Phillies did have some chances. They had runners on bases, and they didn't come around to score. So the Mets pitching staff kept them in the game. And once Wheeler came out, the Mets got to the Phillies bullpen, and they put up that 5 spot in the 8th inning to really kind of, I don't want to say seal the deal, because obviously you never know, especially in the postseason, and that's a good Phillies lineup. But you felt a lot more comfortable about the Mets' chances to win that game, and they get the insurance run in the 9th inning as well to give them a little bit more separation. The Phillies do tack on run in the 9th, so the Mets win Game 1 6-2. But that was really, like I said, I think the tone setting game, and obviously it's Game 1, so you're trying to set the tone. But really, it was just a blueprint for how the series was going to transpire for the Mets, I think.
Yeah, eventually we saw a lot of games where the Mets handled the bullpen, maybe not necessarily handled the starting pitching. So yeah, that was definitely I think the most obvious way of getting, completely shut out by Zach Wheeler for 7 innings and then score 6 runs in the last 2 innings. The Mets were never out of that game. They kept in. Kudos to the pitching. The pitching tremendous in this series as well. Keeping us in the game was the best what Singa, Peterson, and as the guys you mentioned could do at that point, and they did. I heard on the broadcast that although the Phillies had a pretty darn good bullpen during the regular season, that anyone who the Mets faced after Wheeler would be a godsend for the Mets offense. That's exactly what happened. They immediately strung some hits together. You saw a different vibe in the bullpen. I think the vibe was now we're gonna get the Phillies, and they did. Wheeler was awesome. Obviously, the home plate umpire also helped. A very good starting pitcher. Because sure, why not help an already dominant pitcher get even more strikes in the game? That was also horrendous to see. So the Mets weren't helped. But they still were able to get the win, and in an impressive way. The Phillies bullpen, although they didn't look good in this series, had a very good year. Jeff Hoffman, Matt Strom, Estevez, all had a good season. I think Strom and Hoffman were all stars for the Phillies this year. So um, it's not like, although it looked like that, it's not like they faced bad bullpen arms. They faced a lot of good bullpen arms, and they handled them under pressure, which is extremely impressive and something we will mention later, probably in this podcast. It gives us a lot of hope.
We talked about in the last episode too. I brought it up that um, this is not the same Phillies bullpen from you know 2021, 22. At that time frame when it was just a detriment to their team. They improved their bullpen, and it was very good in the regular season. Obviously, regular season and postseason are two different animals. So, um, and we saw that here with the Phillies bullpen. The Mets were able to get to them, and so it was just basically survive the starter. If the starter's on, make sure your pitching staff keeps you in the game, and once the bullpen comes in, start chipping away and uh, get go get them basically.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to point out that it's not just the Phillies bullpen, but in this whole postseason we see elite bullpen arms. Devin Williams, obviously with the Pete Alonso home run, but if you look at Cleveland, Passe, I think probably the best closer in the game right now, um, allowed a 3-run homer a couple of days ago and allowed a run yesterday, although he did get the save. So postseason, different animal, and we see that in elite closers. Um, if they are elite closers, great, but that's definitely not a given. So we see that the bullpens in this postseason overall have their tendencies to give up leads, and that's what pressure does with a team. It's extra pressure, and the Mets have handled that pressure spot really well, I would say.
Yeah, and obviously, like we talked about, there were some pressure moments in this series, even though the Mets won this series in 4 games. The one game the Phillies did win was Game 2. They beat the Mets 7-6. This was a game where the Mets had a 3-0 lead until the 6th inning when Bryce Harper hit a 2-run homer, followed by a Nick Castellanos home run to tie the game. The Mets got the run back on a Brandon Nimmo home run, so they get the lead. And then everything kind of starts to fall apart a little bit in the 8th inning with Edwin Diaz not looking as sharp as we would like him. He did get the last out in the 7th inning, but he came back out to face Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Bryson Stott, and it did not, unfortunately, pan out the way Mendoza, the players, the fans, everyone who was rooting for the Mets wanted it to go. So the Phillies take the lead, but then Mark Vientos, who's really making a name for himself in the postseason. I mean, we know about Mark Vientos, but not maybe on a national level. People know about Mark Vientos, and he has certainly bursted onto the scene there with a big 2-run homer, his second of the game to tie the game. Unfortunately, in the ninth, the Phillies would walk it off, as the Mets were probably going to have to ride Tyler McGill, who ended up getting the loss. They were probably have to ride him for as long as they could, just with the bullpen situation and whatnot. So the Phillies come back to win Game 2, 7-6, and um, we talked about in our chat that leaving Philadelphia with a split was. I mean, obviously they could have left Philadelphia up 2-0. They let it get away a bit, but leaving Philadelphia with one win in your pocket, and then you got the next two in New York. That's a scenario I think the Mets coming into this series would be very, very happy with, and that was what the end result was there.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think the way that you played that second ball game. I mean, obviously you don't want to lose a walk-off game, but I think the Mets showed so much fight in that game, coming back a couple of times. They really showed the Phillies, hey, even if you get the lead in the eighth inning, we're not done. We are gonna hunt you. And although you could say that the momentum shifted to the Phillies, where I think the Mets um, ended that game on a high note. Yes, you lost. You also have to take into account that you had to ride Tyler McGill, obviously not your best arm available at that point. Unfortunately, that was more of an availability for some other pitchers that weren't available. So yeah, you had to pitch not your strongest arm in that spot against I think it was the heart of the order. So when I was watching that game, I thought if we get through this ninth inning, then I see us have a good chance. But I didn't have a feeling that after we didn't get the lead, I hoped after it was tied, I hoped we were able to add one more so we have a lead. But when it stayed tied, I had a feeling that the Phillies would walk it off. So for me, when it happens, it was already a sort of part of my expectations. So I wasn't that hurt about it. And like you said, I think fairly shortly after the game was done, I chatted with you and said, well, it's 1-1. We're going back to New York and we have to finish it there, knowing what could have been for game 5 as well. And luckily, the Mets did exactly do that.
No question about that. Severino started that game and gave him 6 solid innings, but you kind of brought up a point a little bit, particularly with Severino, maybe more down the stretch here, because I thought that was a kind of a similar game he pitched the last time he pitched in Philadelphia, where the Mets had a lead and then some home runs. I think it was actually Harper in that regular season game in the home run that kind of sparked the Phillies there, and it was kind of a similar area in the ball game. Sixth inning, somewhere in that area. So, um, is that a concerning factor for you with Luis Severino moving forward? Because obviously he's got some more games on his plate, at least one more anyway. And it's going to be against a good lineup, no matter who the Mets face in the National League Championship Series. So, is there any concern for Luis Severino? Because he's pitched a lot of innings, and it's been a while since he's done that. So you just wonder if maybe he's tiring, maybe a little bit earlier than the Mets or the coaching staff and Mendoza are hoping for.
Well, it is slightly concerning, I would say, because yeah, I think it was the sixth inning twice, and it was the sixth. I think he allowed that home run to Harper as well. So maybe just Harper sees him really well. Maybe that's the case. And then, but I do believe that lately he has some stretches where he starts the game really well, and then at the end of his outing he falters a little bit. I don't have a feeling in my memory it's not the first or the second time lately. So that's a little bit concerning. He also had that um, Brewers outing where although he finished that well, he didn't start that game well. So I think he allowed like 8 hits over 6 innings, which is a fair share. So he gets hit a bit lately, which for me, if you look at the Mets starters right now, who they have, um, I think I would put him fourth behind Manaea, Quintana, and Peterson and Senga. So actually, fifth, I've got about Senga, but we know that you don't necessarily know how long he can throw. But he will get his starts. I think the Mets have shown with Peterson that he can be a very valuable uh, Corbin, Patrick Corbin, 2019 light lefty out of the bullpen that can pitch enormous innings for us. He has handled himself really, really well in that spot with that save against the Brewers, and then the outing he had after Senga, and then in Game 4. So I think that doesn't change. But right now, if I am the Mets and I can rearrange my rotation the way I would like, I would definitely uh, move Severino a little bit back for Senga, Quintana, and Manaea. I think Manaea is obviously a number one. I don't know if he's available on Sunday. I don't think so. So you could go Senga, then Manaea, then Quintana, and then Severino. Because for me, he is the, yeah, how you say it. I think he's still pitching well, but for me, he's the he has performed the least good out of all the arms in the postseason.
Saying he's the weakest link right now in the rotation.
I think that's a rough word because he's still pitching well, but he does have his tendencies to lately to falter a little bit. To maybe I don't know how to say it, but it balloons a little bit on him. That's maybe the word I'm
I,
looking for.
I think the thing that is bothersome a little bit about that one, the most recent one against the Phillies, was it all happened with 2 outs. So he was, 1 out away from just ending the inning, and it was the walk to Turner, or not the walk to Turner. Turner had a base hit. He got on base. I don't think Severino had a walk in this game, which is obviously very good. But you know, 2 out knock, Turner, and then Harper and Castellanos. So with 2 outs, it just makes it more um, aggravating, I guess is the word, because you just you're almost out of it. You can just head back to the dugout, but he couldn't make that one pitch to get the final out. So and that happened maybe a couple times in this game with the bullpen as well. But like we said, heading back to New York, tied one apiece. It's not the end of the world. It just kind of stunk because it felt like the Mets could have won that game in Philadelphia. But you're heading back to New York, tied at one apiece with your guy Sean Manaea on the mound, and Sean Manaea just did Sean Manaea things. It was brilliant in this outing, and obviously he got some run support as well. Pete Alonso starting things off with a home run. Jesse Winker with a moonshot. Jose Starling Marte with a big 2 out knock to drive in two. So you got 4-0 lead after 6 innings. Sean Manaea goes 7 strong, 7+ with 3 hits, only 1 run, which was earned, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. And Jose Iglesias also had a big 2 RBI hit as well with 2 outs. So the Mets defeat the Phillies in Game 3 in New York, 7-2, the first NLDS game in Citi Field since 2015. It did kind of bother me a little bit going back and people talking about the first big playoff game at Citi Field in a decade. I was like, well, they played in the wild card round 2 years ago in New York, so I guess we're not counting the wild card round because the Mets lost. But no, it was a great game for the Mets. Probably the best game they played all around, maybe in this series. That could be debatable, but it just seemed like everything was clicking for the Mets in this game. And something we've talked about a lot is some guys maybe don't necessarily have the clutch gene. They had a lot of big hits with 2 outs in this game to drive in runs. The Winker home run was with 2 outs. Like I said, Marte and Iglesias' hits were with 2 outs to drive in runs. So if I do my math correctly, that's 5 of these 7 runs were with 2 outs. So not bad, not bad for a team that we said maybe has trouble driving in runs when in clutch moments.
Well, I think we have seen in this postseason that that right now it's just clicking on all cylinders, and they are doing that well too. Maybe in the last game they had some opportunities early that they missed, but this game I think especially telling was that Marte hit because we had the bases loaded with nobody out, and then we got 2 outs. And then getting that base hit makes it even more of a backbreaker for the other pitcher because he thinks, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm almost out of this," and then Marte delivers. So I think that was the real backbreaker for the Phillies in that game. Like I mentioned, Manaea was awesome. Obviously helped that too. And what about Jesse Winker staring that baseball into the second deck, standing there for like 5-6 seconds? That guy is an odd little dude, I would say. Not little, he's probably a lot taller than me, but especially taller than you, Andrew. I know that for sure.
5'8". I'm like the average height for a dude, so whatever.
In America, we know we are the tallest country, Andrew.
Oh,
I
good,
told you that.
good for you. Well, I gotta correct myself here, uh, because Francisco Lindor's RBI double in the eighth inning came with 2 outs. So 6 of the 7 runs came with 2 outs. So clutch hitting by the New York Mets in Game 3. And we talked about Sean Manaea, and like you said, when we were talking about Severino, and you're trying to line up your rotation for the NLCS. He's the ace of the staff, and he did it yet again. Great outing. And what they were saying was, um, on the post game, that I they post a little clips on social media, whatever. They were talking about how his sweeper usage looked like it was up in this game, and actually threw some more left on left changeups in this game as well. So, uh, and the Phillies had a reputation of uh, being a good fastball hitting team and chasing the off speed stuff out of the strike zone. So if that was the case, the scouting report coming in, Shamanai made some adjustments to his pitch usage, and I'd say it worked out pretty well for him.
I think both lefties in the last 2 games who started really showed a weakness in the Phillies offense. They chased a fair bunch. I think also against Quintana they chased a lot or went after balls, maybe eventually walking, but even in the at bat they chased. And Manaea let them chase too, and yeah, like you said, that was the scouting report. We saw that with Quintana. Quintana wasn't necessarily afraid to throw a 3-1 changeup below the zone. And often, I think more often than not, they swung over that. So it shows that the game plan with Quintana and with Manaea was, even if they are on hitters counts, we're not going to give in. And if they walk, they walk. But it's not what we're not going to give them a fastball because it's a good fastball team. And it worked. I think they both. I think obviously we're talking about Game 3 first with Sean Manaea, but I think you can combine those two lefties and how they try to work the Philadelphia Phillies, and they both did a tremendous job, and they both got the results for what they tried to do. And thank you, Phillies, for keep chasing most of the time.
Yeah, so a very good Game 3 for the New York Mets. I also have to mention, because we are fans of Tyrone Taylor, very big fans of Tyrone Taylor. His throw out, he threw Bohm out second base. That was also a big play. So have to give Tyrone Taylor his props here, because maybe he hasn't been great offensively like he was down the stretch for the Mets, but he's still doing things that are helping the team win, and that's obviously Exhibit A right there, throwing out a runner, getting him out of scoring position. So Tyrone Taylor gets a seal of approval from us here on the Queens Connection.
We have to find another word for that, by the way, for our approval. But that's what we have been saying all year about Tyrone Taylor. I think since April we said doesn't matter if he doesn't get a hit in a game, he does something to help you out. And although the numbers maybe don't reflect a great hitting season, or maybe the wins above replacement don't reflect it, that's where you need your eyes to tell you that Tyrone Taylor, maybe besides lesser numbers, is a big part of this team's success.
No doubt about that. So the Mets had a chance to clinch the series in Game 4, and you talked about off the air with me about me being a pessimist in this game, and you were being more the optimist, which was fair. But this was a big game for the Mets because if you lose this game, you have to go back to Philadelphia. You got to face Zach Wheeler, and we know the Mets were able to stay in the ball game against Zach Wheeler the last time. But if I had the choice, if my between having the Mets clinch in New York and just seal the deal compared to having to face Zach Wheeler in Game 5, I'm gonna take the former in that situation and definitely not the latter. So this is a big crucial Game 4 for the Mets, and they had some chances early with Jose Quintana on the mound, and like we talked about with Manaea, Quintana in this game was very, very good. But the Mets had chances early, and they couldn't get a run against Ranger Suarez, who finished with 4 and a third, with 4 walks and 5 hits. So that just shows you how the Mets were getting traffic on against Ranger Suarez. They just couldn't bring anyone around to score. Suarez did have 8 strikeouts because the Mets were having a hard time. I think Adam Wainwright said on the broadcast they're just having a hard time picking up that curveball, and that was his putout pitch in that game. The Phillies were the first ones to get on the board on a Alec Bohm, what they ruled a fielder's choice, uh, with Mark Vientos not being able to clean that little chopper cleanly, so the Phillies get a run there. But like we talked about in Game 1, um, you know, the Mets, and particularly Jose Quintana, uh, didn't let the Phillies get anything more than that. Um, have to give credit to Reed Garrett and David Peterson as well, uh, because the Mets finally were able to crack the Phillies pitching staff in the 6th inning against Jeff Hoffman and Carlos Estevez, and it was who else but Francisco Lindor to deliver a grand slam to give the Mets a 4-1 lead. That is how this game would end. It got dicey a bit in that 9th inning, with Edwin Diaz walking the first 2 batters, but he got the next 3 batters out, including a strikeout of Cody Clemens and Kyle Schwarber to finish it off. So the Mets punched their ticket to the National League Championship Series, and you raved about Quintana already, but if you want to do that again, go right ahead. He finished with 5 innings, 2 hits to 1 run, which wasn't earned, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. And like we talked about on our last show, particularly me, the guys who we were maybe more critical of because they weren't necessarily performing at their best, really the whole month of September and carrying now halfway into October. Jose Quintana has been an absolute stud for this Mets rotation.
Probably, if you look at the numbers, maybe even the lowest ERA since that point. So he's been amazing. The game, like I said, the game plan was noticeable. Just didn't give in, lived around the zone. Uh, got some swings and misses on pitches outside the zone, but that's what makes Quintana tough. Changing it up nicely. He was tremendous. He was in control, and also a good thing that Adam Wainwright, by the way, did a very good job on the boat. We mentioned Adam Wainwright a couple of times. I think he was fabulous. Said that showed that this deceptive motion makes it harder for hitters to pick up, and he made the best of it. He also made the best of a Phillies lineup that's probably anxious to do something big. Like I said, not giving in when needed. I think the only guy who was able to, read Quintana was Harper, but the rest, I think Bohm a couple of times. Obviously, Alec Bohm was struggling mightily. He went after a couple of change-up below the zone. I think Turner had a really tough time with Quintana, if I remember correctly. So great to see it's not an easy lineup to face, but Quintana just like you said, kept us in the game. Besides, obviously, with the way he pitched, he had a lot of 3-ball counts. Uh, made him throw just 5 innings, but that was a given with how the game plan was. I think if you try to nibble around the corner, even in hitters counts, you will get your fair share of 3-ball counts. But you definitely take it. The bullpen did great after waiting for that big hit the Mets had. Obviously, we had our chances, but finally Lindor came through. And I wanna a little bit for our listeners I wanna say a little bit giving them an insight in our chat for that game, because it started off with Andrew saying, "Oh, we won game one in Milwaukee, and we lost game two, and we lost game two in Philadelphia. Now we won game three, so the even numbers aren't exactly our cup of tea right now. So that's not a good sign, because for whatever reason, Andrew wasn't necessarily the most optimistic before the game already, and then the game started, and it was oh Jesus Christ, I have a bad feeling about this game. I have a bad feeling about this game. It's not going to go well. And I think after the third time you said something like you said Jesus Christ. I think after probably the fifth inning when the Mets left some runners. So I thought, not going to respond now. Earlier I said they have opportunities. They will get opportunities. So we'll be fine. After that, they were fine, Andrew. So don't doubt the New York Mets. We are playing good baseball right now. We are getting our chances. We did that all series. So even if they maybe missed a couple of opportunities early in the game, they got their opportunities, and I had no uh, doubt in my mind that there was another opportunity coming. I would say if they missed out on that sixth inning, I probably would have altered a little bit more to your thought process. But eventually, I knew that there were opportunities still to come after the first couple of innings.
Thanks for taking people inside baseball there. You know,
I think people enjoy how an insight in our chat there, especially with the voice I did. I think that makes it even better.
yeah, it was great. It was a great, great impersonation of me. Whatever. But you talk about not doubting the Mets. That's kind of what Carlos Mendoza said when they were popping the champagne when he addressed the team before everyone was doused in champagne. And something too to talk about, and we've talked about this before on here, but um, the media asking certain players about Francisco Lindor. You think about Jesse Winker and Francisco Alvarez are the ones that pop out to mind. I think it was more the Alvarez one. He said he is our leader, and that's something we've said multiple times on here. This team goes through Francisco Lindor. When he's on, the team is just it's even more on point. Um, so we captaincies in baseball and whatnot might be a little overrated, but there's no doubt that if the Mets were to name a new captain in the future, it's going to be the guy manning shortstop wearing number 12. He is the life of this team, and luckily will continue to be for many more years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, he's not just, I think Carlos Mendoza said it, or I don't know if another player said it, but I'm not sure. But it doesn't matter. Somebody in the Mets clubhouse said um, Lindor is a 5-tool player in every way. And that's not just what he can do on the baseball field, but that's also what he does off the baseball field with the players, being enthusiastic, um, doing the right things. And there are too many examples where players say that Lindor is the true leader, that we don't have access to the clubhouse. So if players say that he's the true leader, he is the true leader. And think we also see that at somewhat during the game, but even if players speak so highly about Francisco Lindor, um, he's a good player. He's a great player. So a lead shortstop, does defense well. But the Mets, when they signed Lindor to a long-term deal, was also because of his personality. And he has grown into a leader role. I don't think he was necessarily the 100% leader when he got here, but he is right now. And that's a guy you want to invest in. They did a tremendous job picking Francisco Lindor a couple of years back. And and it helps. I think the Mets from top to bottom right now, with David Stearns, with Carlos Mendoza, who I think will be with this team for some years to come. David Stearns, the same. I think he will be our president of baseball operations for a long time. The Mets are gonna, or at least right now, have built with Steve Cohen at the top as well, a sustainable uh, winning culture, and we didn't expect it to show this year. I think we both on this podcast have said the future is bright, but right now the present is bright too.
No doubt about that. So the Mets are California bound. It's just a matter of is it going to be Los Angeles? Is it going to be San Diego? We'll probably get that answer in about 12, 13 hours now from when we're recording this. But with that being said, there are some interesting roster moves ahead for this team because from what I've read, from what it sounds like, seems like the return of Jeff McNeil is going to be happening this weekend, which makes things interesting. Like I said, for roster construction wise, because if you're going to add Jeff McNeil to the roster, someone obviously has to come off. It's a matter of who is it, and I think it's an interesting discussion to have because there's pros and cons for taking a guy off of the roster, and the I think the maybe not the immediate guy that comes to mind, but a guy that comes to mind is Luis Angel Acuna because he's basically kind of doing the Jeff McNeil thing right now, where he's playing second base late in games for defense. He has had a couple at bats in the postseason, but something that Acuna could do that maybe is more something McNeil can't do is he could be a late game pinch runner. How many times have we said when they get Martinez or Winker on late in the game, it's like, man, this would be a really good time to pinch run for him, but they can't because they want to use Acuna or a Bader for the late inning defense if they have the lead. So, if you want to roster both those guys, then maybe a pitcher has to come off the roster. I mean, Adam Ottavino hasn't thrown a pitch this whole postseason. I don't even know the last time Adam Ottavino's threw a pitch at all in the game. So, um, and with guys like Peterson and McGill right now who are currently in the bullpen, I know we've talked about trying to shoehorn Peterson back into the rotation, but if a guy like Senga is only going to give you 2, 3 innings to start, they're probably going to want to piggyback David Peterson there, and David Peterson's also shown he can be really good late in games too, getting some high leverage outs. So, um, however the Mets construct their NLCS roster, if it does include Jeff McNeil, will certainly be interesting to see who's the guy that they're going to leave off because, like I said, there's pros and cons to every decision you make. So it's a matter of who's going to be. I don't want to say a sacrificial lamb, but who's going to be the guy that's left off. I mean, that remains to be seen. I mean, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on how you would construct this because you know I wouldn't say Acuna's done anything to get taken off the roster, but if you want to have extra arms in the bullpen, he's probably going to come off. But do the 3 days off in between the games also maybe help the bullpen get more rested, so you feel like you can, have one less arm down there? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's a. I think the obvious choice is Acuna. I think that's probably the choice if I have to bet right now who's going to be off the roster. It's Acuna. But what I think Danny Young also hasn't thrown a pitch yet in this series. He does.
No,
or
no, no. I was agreeing with you that he
um,
hasn't thrown a pitch yet.
but he's a lefty, so obviously you keep him there for that sake alone. Um, but yeah, but you still have the the odds that a pitcher just falters too early. Right now, we have seen that pitchers go pretty deep into ball games for the Mets. We mostly see 5 or 6 innings, which is pretty deep into the game in the postseason. But you might have a spot or uh, a moment. And he obviously, besides Senga, but that was calculated, so I don't see that as a in not calculated in arm who takes a shower early. But if you, for example, have Senga for three 3 or 4 innings, and then you need Peterson, then and the next outing you have a guy who doesn't go deep, then you might need those arms to finish some innings off early and then get to McGill probably. So my guess is that also one telling point is that they pinch run Bader instead of Acuna with Vientos. Uh, I think it was the last game. For me, that's a telling point that it was perfect spot to bring Acuna in and not have Bader used at that spot, in my opinion. So that I said it to you, why not Acuna? Well, they went with Bader. To me, that's a little bit of a telling point that they probably go with Acuna as well.
And something that they were talking about or bantering about getting McNeil on the roster is there's not also a left-handed bat on the bench, and if Winker's in the lineup, so I'm not sure how they would utilize McNeil and Iglesias. No Gary Cohen, who was on the Mets post game. No, he was talking about maybe Iglesias with all the games he's played. Maybe he's slowing down a little bit because there were some at bats in the series that were not particularly great at bats from Jose Iglesias. Um, so is it going to be maybe a platoon thing with McNeil and Iglesias going forward? We know McNeil can move around as well. If you want to get Marte off his feet, maybe because we talked about too, the overall numbers for Marte maybe aren't sexy, but the hits he has gotten have come at big times. But Marte is a guy who usually is a play two, take one off kind of guy down the stretch. So I don't know if maybe they want to get Marte off his feet, like I said. So, I mean, McNeil on the roster just definitely makes it more flexible for the Mets. It's just a matter of, like we were talking about, who's going to be the guy who's going to be taken off the roster. I mean, we'll find out on Sunday. Um, but it seems like it's probably going to be Acuna or um, maybe a pitcher. But like you said, you probably want to have as many arms as possible down there, even though some of them haven't thrown a pitch and I mean, it's got to be a couple weeks now, right? I mean, for Ottavino, I think Danny Young pitched the Brewers series. Think he,
I
I don't,
don't think so,
I
but
don't
I'm
think
not.
so either. It might have been up or something like that. I feel like I remember,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm curious. So I got now I'm curious. I sparked my own curiosity here. So Ottavino hasn't thrown a pitch since the doubleheader against the Braves.
Yeah.
And Danny Young hasn't thrown a pitch since
Probably the same.
since
Probably I'm throwing a doubleheader.
since the Saturday game against Milwaukee in the regular season.
Oh wow!
So
So that's
Danny,
even
so
longer.
so for Danny Young, if he is on the roster and game one happens, it'll be 15 days since he last pitched in a major league game. And for Adam Ottavino, that's about what 13 days. If I did my math correctly, which is definitely probably not the case. Yeah, 13 days.
So
So
let me ask you this. You now mentioned Danny Young. Danny Young is a lefty. He's the only somewhat lefty true reliever. Obviously, we have Peterson in the bullpen, but he's a lefty true reliever. And with the other arms we have, do you think it's necessary to have a lefty in the bullpen, in your opinion, in the series coming up?
It might depend on who they play, honestly. If you play the Dodgers, who have Otani, Freeman, and I mean, you could say it. Well, the Phillies had Harper and Stott and whatever, and they didn't use Danny Young, so maybe that argument's not fair or it's not valid, I guess. But I mean, I just think of the Padres more the right-handed power with Tatis, Machado, Higashioka of late for them has been amazing at the bottom of the order. We know Profar is a switchy guy, a switch hitter. Um, you know, so honestly, it
He's
might
also a good guy. He's also a
he's a
good
switchy
guy.
guy. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, it might depend on who they play. You might want to have the lefty if you play the Dodgers. But if you play the Padres, I know they have Arise, Jackson Merrill, but those guys are they're separated so much in the order. Arise is the leadoff guy. And, Merrill's usually hitting like fifth or sixth for him. At least, the last time when the Mets played him, that's how it was. Um, so, it honestly might depend on who's their opponent. But I think but I like the point that you're making is if you're not going to use him in these with these lefties up, what's maybe the point of having him around? And we've seen the right-handers get the lefties out in big spots too. I just think I just wonder like how like even if you have to use Ottavino or Danny Young, how no, obviously they're going to be fresh. You haven't pitched in them almost two weeks, but how effective are they going to be? Um, that remains to be seen. And obviously we know Ottavino's kind of fallen out of the trust circle for Carlos Mendoza, and it seems like maybe Danny Young has as well with kind of that rough September he was having. So if I guess the question is like if the manager maybe doesn't necessarily have a lot of faith in these guys, why are they still on the roster? Because I mean, maybe a Brazabon probably has a little more value than an Ottavino because Brazabon, we talk about guys to eat innings out of the bullpen. Brazabon can pitch 2 innings out of the bullpen, So maybe that's something that happens. I don't know.
I had another name in my head, and I was laughing because I had the exact same thought. If you have those two arms, or maybe a little bit of a early, that moment when a pitcher doesn't have it and you have to use him early. I don't think you need two for that. You might have one open spot, but why not Alex Young? That was the name I had in mind. Alex Young, a guy who can pitch even more than 2 innings, most likely, and a lefty. But another question I was wondering is even if you face lefties, how much right now do you trust or Ottavino or Danny Young to get big outs, even early in the game?
Not very, to be honest with you. I mean, I mean, we talked about how we like Danny Young, but the fact is he struggled down the stretch for the Mets, and um, it's hard to probably throw him in there in a high pressure, high leverage playoff game. Um, and we just said with Ottavino, he's in mop up duty now. Like he doesn't even get like a lot of action. So I guess and I know Ottavino's a veteran. He's got some postseason experience and whatnot. But if you're not going to use him and you don't trust him, then there's probably no point in really rostering him. I mean, because I thought that um game three against the Phillies. I mean, I know they sent no, they had Manaea come out to start the eighth. He got the base runner. You probably, once you get some base runners, you probably got to use more of your high leverage guys. But to me, I was like, this might be a good chance to get Ottavino in. The no, even because then if with the three batter rule, if the Phillies get some runners on, it's a 6-0 game. Then just freaking yank him. Now you bring one of your high leverage guys, and then I know it's some guys are perform better with clean innings rather than inherited base runners. I mean, Reed Garrett's exhibit A of that. But I thought maybe Game Three was a chance they could have pitched Ottavino against the Phillies, and they did not do that. So even with 6-run leads, they're not thinking that Ottavino's I don't want to say capable arm, but a trustworthy arm. So that's just my thing. If you don't trust him, why bother rostering him?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Maybe we'll see even more shifting of the roster um, than we expect with only one move with McNeil. Maybe we do see some. I wouldn't mind seeing Brasserball in there instead of Olovino. I think I trust Brasserball more right now to get some outs than Olovino. So we'll see, but it's. I think it's not a given that those two arms are on the roster. Good discussion, by the way.
I'm just, I always spark good conversations. It's what I do. I come up with great titles for episodes, even though you don't get them. I have to explain them to you. So hopefully, I don't have to explain them to anyone else. I come up with great conversations that just snowball into we go from Jeff McNeil to the bullpen. So I mean, just it's what I'm here to do.
True, Edward. You're right. Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, I need to boost my confidence after you were just mocking me. In our sharing our chat with the world.
It was a good chat to share.
Yeah, it was. It was. I don't know if good chat to
And
share, but it was.
let's be honest. It's not like you said something that was not shared amongst many other Mets fans in the world. I think a lot of people were very anxious and knew that it was the game we had to win. And I believe that that was the case. If the Phillies didn't use Wheeler and we lost, then we would probably have a little bit of a different. Maybe we were sitting here now, feeling sorry for ourselves. Oh no, then the game wasn't even started yet, so probably tomorrow.
Well, I was just. When you load the bases like that, and the first thing you would know outs, and you don't score anything, you're not exactly saying you know, setting the tone, as I like to say early. It's not a great tone setter. So, but
No,
obviously, in the end, it didn't matter, and we still got more baseball to watch. And eventually, I'm going to go visit my doctor, and they can prescribe blood pressure medication for me. I already know you're on it.
yeah, yeah. They,
Now I'm sharing medical information with everyone too. We're sharing our chats. We're sharing medical information.
that's I bet yeah that's what I wanted to say. Yes, that goes a little bit further than sharing the chat.
Well,
But
maybe that.
yes, I am on blood pressure medication. Yes, it started when I first met Andrew. Maybe it's a coincidence. I don't know.
That's fair. That's very fair. I know other people that are on blood pressure medication that know me very well too. So maybe it is it's
let,
the common what is it, the common denominator? I don't know. That's a math term. I'm really bad at math, so I don't know. It's a common factor, I guess.
yeah,
Me
probably.
People associate their high blood pressure issues with me. That's fair. I think that's very
I
fair.
would say that watching these Mets games doesn't help. That probably hurts a lot more than hanging out with you or knowing you.
It it's possible. We can't. I mean, well, I'm not gonna say definitively, but it's a possibility. No.
But let's name all the other people you know that have high blood pressure medicine. Just why not?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think might be a good sign to we need to wrap it up before we say something even more ridiculous, or we're sharing other people's medical information and whatnot. So, um, well, hopefully we won't be talking about that in the next episode. Hopefully we'll be discussing some positives rather than negatives in our next episode, and that is to be determined based on what happens in the National League Championship Series. Will it be the Dodgers? Will it be the Padres? We're not 100% sure when as we're recording this, but like I said earlier, we're going to know in about 12 hours or so. Um, Before we go, I'm not asking you. You asked me this question on the chat too yesterday, and I declined to answer it because every time I answer this, it doesn't matter if it's the Mets, my football team, my hockey team, and I say I'd rather they play Team X. Well, Team X always beats my team, so I'm not going to say anything. So I'm going to rephrase the question like this: Which team,
Okay.
which team would you get more satisfaction seeing the Mets beat?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Oh, I think um, I think I'm going to go with the Padres because of the wild card series 2 years ago. I think it would be pretty sweet to get some revenge in that regard. Although it's closer than than you might think because the Dodgers, have the guy that gets away with stuff and they trade uh, the heck out of him. Yes, he had a very good year, not gonna lie, but it gets a little bit too crazy for my liking. But I still, with what happened a couple of years ago with the drama that we had in the wild card series, it would be very sweet to get some revenge there.
I said the Padres as well, and not I didn't really factor 2022 into that. I'm not going to be mad at the Dodgers for spending money because people get mad at the A's for not spending money. They got mad at the White Sox or whatever. So if teams want to spend money, have at it. Spend your money or whatnot. I picked the Padres because they're a way more dislikable team, whether it's Manny Machado, Tatis, Mike Schilt. I hate AJ Preller. You know how much I hate AJ Preller, their general manager. So the Padres are way more, to me, are way more hateable than the Dodgers. The Dodgers, as much as I don't like Dave Roberts, I think he's a little crybaby. When someone throws a ball at their dugout, which is it was like nothing. Like stop, Dave Roberts, you're just a crybaby. No, the Dodgers have more, to me, more likable players. Like I know Freddie Freeman kills the Mets, but you can respect him. He's a really good ball player. Mookie Betts, really good ball player. So the players for the Dodgers are more respectable for me rather than on the Padres. So that's why I picked the Padres. And now we're gonna play the Padres and they're gonna beat us.
Maybe, but we don't have any say on that, Andrew. What we say doesn't change anything. But I do agree with what you said about the Padres. I think the Dodgers have a lot of well-respected players. Although you still overall don't like him because they're good, but they have respected players. I think Freddie Freeman is a great dude. At least he looks to me like a great dude. The Padres do have some eh, type of players. Let me rephrase it with your favorite word. I also wanted to say there's something that it's different, it's not matched, but you mentioned something with people getting mad that the A's don't spend. Something what bothered me is that the Tigers payroll that is very low. Well, kudos to them. They have a lot of young players. But they were bad for a long, long time to get some good players, draft and trade, and blah blah blah. Even this year they traded away Jack Flaherty, and like you said, I hate that it's celebrated that a team doesn't spend. And they compared Josh Hader's contract to the Tigers payroll. They had a tweet out there with all the players who make more than the Tigers World Series roster because Javier Baez isn't on there. That's mentioned that too. And I just think that's you want your team to buy players, and you want the money that owners make, spend it on players, spending on a good product on the field, and not keep it for yourself. So stop um, celebrating low payrolls.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too with the Tigers. I know we're trying to wrap this show up, but I mean, you say no, they. It's weird because the Tigers they have shown they'll spend money. I mean, obviously the Baez contract was bad. They spent money at Kenta Maeda. They brought Jack. They took a. I don't want to say took a flyer on Jack Flaherty. I'm sure Jack Flaherty is making a hefty amount of money this year, but they brought guys in, and obviously, at the time where they were at in the standings at the deadline, they probably did the right thing in trading some guys off that they could. It's now it just so happens that they get this influx of younger players on their team, and now they're playing great or whatever. And we know that they made a run at Carlos Correa when he was a free agent because obviously with the AJ Hinch connection and whatnot. So, I mean, at least the Tigers have shown their willingness to write a check for someone compared to the Oakland A's where they just don't. So, um, but I know what you're saying. I know what you're getting at. You know, the people that are saying, "Oh, the A's don't spend money," blah blah blah. We're mad at them, but now we're looking at the Tigers and now their current payroll, and we're like, "Wow, look at the Tigers. They're great. You know, they know how to allocate their resources." Blah blah blah. You know, so I know what you were getting at there.
It's not necessarily the Tigers. It's just that you don't need to throw that into the world, throw that on Twitter, payroll out of it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all if you are in the playoffs, if you have a $300 million payroll. The Mets can handle a $300 million payroll. They might have a $300 million payroll next year. So it's different. But don't throw it. Watch good baseball, watch good players, and be happy that players get paid and owners not keep it for themselves. And I'm not saying that the Tigers did that, but it's just an overall thing that a general thing that I didn't like about it.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's keep payroll out of playoff baseball, and let's keep win probability out of playoff baseball. That's my final.
No, that's a good stat. That's a good stat. That's very important.
That's my final thought here on the show. Keep win probability out of postseason baseball. At least we don't need to see on the screen anyway. ESPN
for everything. If ESPN listens to us, keep it just to get Andrew aggravated even more in playoff baseball. That's all we need.
Just to raise my blood pressure.
Yes, just to have your blood pressure medicine as well.
That's right. Join the club. All right, let's wrap it up here. So we thank you, Mr. Corne Ogilvie, for joining us. We'll talk to you in the next episode, and like I said, hopefully it's a upbeat, positive episode. Hopefully for the New York Mets and us. So thanks for joining, sir, as always.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. This has been episode number 47 of The Queen's Connection, a production of PHAN Sports Creative. Make sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter. Just search The Queen's Connection. We'll pop right up. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen on Spotify or YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully you enjoy the National League Championship Series.